right, it's Friday morning, and I'm excited because I haven't co-hosted a show with an outside guest, so I got Steve Greenfield sitting next to me. We're talking about tariffs, Ford, and GPT. Everywhere I go, the people really want to know who I is and who I be. They stop and stare with this is one of those weird weeks. We were talking just before the show. That's one of the weird weeks in the world where I, Kyle Mountsier, have traveled more than Steve Greenfield. It's
yes,
a miracle.
You have. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I have something to be proud of. I'll ask your family.
Yeah, yeah. Let's not. I was telling someone this last week, and I've Paul makes fun of me all the time, or maybe he's jealous, but I hit the old diamond status last year for this year. And I used to say, I'm not sure if D is for diamond or D is for divorce when you get to that level, but I'm still happily married. Life is good, not a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, good for you, because it's getting harder to hit that threshold with Delta. So it is a badge of honor now to get there.
Right, exactly. So where were you this week? Were you chatting with dealers, chatting with investment stuff? What have you been up to?
I was down on the coast of Georgia, not too far from here, at an industry strategic retreat. So for a large company, talking to their customers who are all automotive, insurance, and vehicle remarketers in the auction world were there in the audience. So probably had about an hour presentation to about 400 people, and talking about the themes going on in the industry right now, which there are no shortage of.
Yeah, when you get, and you've been kind of like leaning into this side of the world the last 4 or 5 years, something like that.
Yep.
And the deeper you go, the more you realize there's like more webs to untangle and uncover and talk about how they impact today, tomorrow, all those types of things. It's like it's a never-ending story matrix at this point.
Well, that's good. I haven't told anyone this, so I started working on my third book, and the loose title is Unintended Consequences, because as I've been on this earth for a while now, I see that humans are pretty poor at anticipating what consequences might be it drug usage, be it plastic usage, whatever. I mean, your mind can wander. There's all kinds of thematic areas I'm going to dig into here and try to come up with a framework at the end around how we can be better looking into the future and anticipating what the consequences of our actions might be. So it's been fun so far. Lots of case studies. And now I'm working on what the framework might be for recommendations in the future. But auto is a great example. I mean, you push over here, and over here you have a reaction, and sometimes those reactions are anticipated and sometimes not.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I remember talking to, and I don't know if you were at this event, but I was talking to Alan Crutch. I think it was a futurist at one of the auto tech conferences in Southern California a couple years ago that was just talking about, like, there are people that study that for a living. And at this point, at least, like as a society, as a culture, as a humanity, we've not figured out how to get around the things that futurists look forward. And it seems almost like impossible to avoid.
Right.
So it would be interesting if there could be a framework in which to avoid some of these things. So wild.
Well, I'm gonna do my best. It's a work in progress right now. So you have to give me another year. I'm gonna work on this thing. But in my spare time, I'm working on the third book. So we'll see how this thing comes together.
Very cool. Well, I'll say this: we may not be futurists, we may not be able to tell you exactly what's coming, but I can tell you that at Soducon, we do our darndest to bring together the people that are thinking about what to do right now, what to do next. Steve, you'll be there. It's the middle of May. You got to get your tickets now. We've been saying this over and over. If you don't have your hotel room yet, and you're thinking, I'll just get it 15, 20 days out, I can be on site. That just won't happen this year. We're already starting to get close to the primary hotel selling out. So make sure you get in there. There's obviously other hotels in the area, but you're going to want to get in there. You're going to want to be at a Soducon. You can rub elbows with Steve, even though, I don't know about elbows and Steve, that's a weird joke.
There you go.
You muted yourself, Kyle. That's weird.
Didn't hit anything.
Yes.
See, I'm back on. See, this is what's fun. I'm not back on I was off on the live stream, but the recording people will hear all of the silly words that I said. So if you're listening to that, speaking of silly words,
segue
time.
The U.S., according to Donald Trump and a note he left on Truth Social, said that they will be imposing a additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports starting next week, doubling the 10% duty placed earlier this month. President Trump also confirmed that as of next week, the 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods are set to still take place on March 4th, citing a lack of progress in combating fentanyl and smuggling. The Mexico and Canada tariffs were previously delayed for 30 days, but Trump says no further reprieve will be granted. China's retaliated and is expecting to do so again. Beijing has not made an offer to curb fentanyl-related exports, which Trump's administration seeks to sees as like a key to lifting these tariffs. Obviously, these tariffs have a massive impact potentially on the automotive industry and especially the Mexico and Canada stuff as we look at like what's manufactured and what's built, what's brought over from those countries.
Yeah, I don't know what to say at this point. I mean, I'm already getting tariff fatigue with all this stuff. Trying to track this stuff literally on a day-by-day basis is tough. But yeah, listen, we know what Trump's game typically is, right? So he tries to anchor people way out here and then bring people back if he can get some concessions. I expect that's what's going to happen this time as well. He's looking for extra concessions from, in this case, both Canada and Mexico will likely be able to extract those, because this is not a good thing if these tariffs go into place. Not a good thing for anyone. It's not a good thing for the automakers, the tier one suppliers whose costs go up. Not a good thing for the consumers who will end up paying more for the vehicles. Trump knows that, but they've been a really good, obviously effective bargaining chip so far. So I think yet again, he'll bring us right to the brink and try to get some extra concessions out of both Mexico and Canada. Don't know behind the scenes what those concessions might be. But at some point, the challenge is going to be we're all going to get fatigued and stop paying attention to all these threats. But for the time being, they've been very effective.
They've been effective. Yep. Well, speaking of being effective.
Stop. Segue.
Time.
We're not sure where Ford or GM or anyone on the EV side is going, but Ford Motor Company is now scrapping its plan to stock and distribute electric vehicles through regional inventory hubs, a pilot initiative that faced resistance from dealers. The automaker initially aimed to store unsold EVs at 21 what they were calling rapid replenishment centers across the U.S., delivering them to dealerships within 2 weeks of a customer order. However, slow adoption, logistical issues prompted Ford to revert to a traditional wholesale model. So they were testing something out to get a little bit closer to the distribution network. Dealer resistance, obviously, a bit of a role there. The separate sales process, inventory visibility issues meant unsold vehicles weren't listed on dealer websites or third-party marketplaces like cars.com. So there wasn't even like the awareness that these were available. Ford executive Mike O'Brien stated, "We think the pilot from an operational perspective was a big success. That being said, we listened to our dealers. It's a little tricky to have two different sales methodologies."
Yeah, hey, this is directly out of, talk about unintended consequences. You remember like 3 or 4 years ago, right in the middle of COVID, OEMs were talking about agency models. In the case of Ford, they were talking about doing this for the EVs, and GM with the Hummer, when they released the Hummer, the only way to book that was through Hummer.com. And part of that was this kind of quote unquote virtual inventory, right? So dealers were going to get access to being able to check inventory out of a library that was local to them, that just in time delivery of inventory, and taking some of the inventory burden off of a dealer's lot, putting into a centralized locations and allowing the dealers to access it. But like all things in life, there are unintended consequences. And if the cars aren't on a dealer's website and they aren't on these third-party sites, we know that 95% of consumers shop online before they ever think about which dealer they're going to go into, and it's a challenge. So they've got to figure this out. I think dealers would love the flexibility of not having to take the inventory burden on their lot, but you're going to have to make sure that the cars are online, available, and merchandised. And then if they are, how's a consumer going to go to cars.com and say, great, which dealer is this vehicle at?
Right.
And I want to go test drive it.
Where do I test drive it? Yep.
And you can't visit it. So there are going to be growing pains with this kind of inventory optimization model, which needs help, but obviously this approach has not worked yet.
Yeah, I think when I think about this, I look at two different things. Is one, that you've got a OEM that makes their money at the point of wholesale, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that, I think, will consistently be a rub to the kind of like golden nugget in the sky of the agency model, because now you have all this holding cost that you just were not ever having to foot as an OEM. And that just seems really, really weird to me. And then the other side is like, we know from, especially from used cars, but also new cars, like inventory is a driver of sales. Like consumers want that. And they've told us since COVID that they're heading back to the stores to get the real-time information on those vehicles. So I just can't see a world where you don't have inventory holding in a place that's possible for the consumer to see, and an OEM willing to kind of like completely change their business model and have holding costs that they've never had on their balance sheet of these pieces of inventory.
Yeah, I think all of this sounded very, very positive and attractive theoretically during COVID. You remember, with every passing month, cars were appreciating, new cars were appreciating, and something like in the year 2022, 90% plus of cars were selling above MSRP. That all sounds great, but we're back to a more regular new car market with inventories being 3 million pieces of inventory on dealers' lots, and we're back to regular depreciation schedules on new vehicles. And it's like you said, like it's a hot potato, right? The car gets produced, the OEM does not want to be holding that inventory. Right. Better to push the inventory onto the dealers. Dealers can take the inventory, they can take the inventory risk and pay the interest rate for the holding costs. And the dynamics have changed dramatically since the heart of COVID.
Yep. Speaking of dynamics changing.
Stop. Segue.
Time. The world of AI is consistently changing, and at this point, new models are getting released almost every other week. OpenAI has officially launched GPT 4.5 yesterday afternoon, its largest and most knowledgeable model yet, though it does seem to fall short of being a frontier model, meaning it being out in front of all of the other models that they have. The new system improves on GPT-4's computational efficiency by 10x and reduces hallucinations, kind of their biggest talking point on it. But its performance lags between OpenAI's latest O1 and O3 mini models. It's trained with synthetic data, similar to the previous GPT models like 3.5 and 4, not the O models or the mini models. But it has new supervision techniques alongside traditional fine-tuning and reinforcement learning. Right now, only available to GPT Pro users. And Sam Altman already said that GPT-5 is going to be already on its way by late May. The one interesting thing, if you're using GPT or you're using these models to recognize, is that 4.5 is not a reasoning model. So it's a very quick, very fast, like chat style interaction where you can quickly get answers, and it has a bit more of human intent built into it, as opposed to the reasoning models that kind of have their own reasoning set of rules and aren't driven by like human intent and synthetic training, where those models are attempting to do those things on their own and kind of formulate their own opinions. You use GPT?
I do. I use it fairly frequently. It makes my life a lot easier, that's for sure. And I'm shocked at how much better it's getting. But I do wonder, I'm going to date myself here, but in the early days of the PC, when Intel was the chip that was inside every PC and laptop, people paid a lot of attention with every new generation of Intel chip because they were so much better. And I wonder at some point if we're going to stop paying as much attention to these new releases, and they're just going to continue to evolve and release as we go. And right now people spend a lot of time scrutinizing each new iteration of OpenAI or any of the other engines. At some point, I think we're just going to expect that this thing is going to continue to evolve, and I wonder if we'll continue to pay attention to these new releases.
Yeah, I agree with that. The excitement right now around AI is extremely high, maybe a little bit too high, because I do, I'm excited about using 4.5 because if it hallucinates less than like 4.0, mini, there's a ton of hallucination in there, meaning like it just makes its own stuff up. So I'm excited to see like, hey, does it get to the point? Does it have the right data and information a little bit more often? Because I think that's what everybody's after is like make sense of the things that are actually real. Don't make up stuff.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I mean, that's bound to get better.
Yep. Well, hey, we're rolling out today. I'm kicking out the music. Steve, it's been good hanging out with you. My screen is frozen because these cameras, you never know what they're going to happen. But I'm still here with you in heart. Go serve someone today. Love people more than you love cars.